Hi again. I have another question to respond to. Very exciting. This comes from, this came by text, so I'm going to sort of unpack it to be a little more understandable for the rest of you. This is from Jessica, who is a 7 on the Enneagram. She says, I need to decide today whether to enroll into an art licensing course, and I cannot make up my mind, mostly because of the cost and the thought of taking yet another class. Though I do feel like it'll be really helpful, I'm just wary of spending more money before I'm really making any money. I hear you, Jessica. I have been there with that one myself. We're going to pull some cards for you, and today the Toth deck is speaking to me. I love this deck, and I'm not surprised it chimed in because I use Toth a lot when I'm making big decisions. It's kind of like the heavy hitter deck for me. So we're going to pull cards for if you take the course, pros and cons. If you don't take the course, pros and cons, and then a general advice card. I think that's always helpful. Sometimes ambiguous, but we'll work with that. Okay, so the pro, taking the course. Let me pull these all and then I'll show you guys. Pro and con advice. That's great. Okay, so pros and cons of taking the course. If you take the course, we have the Magus, the magician. In the Toth deck, there are 3 Magi, but I've been instructed it's best to remove 2 of those and just use 1 card. So this is the one I picked. I think there's a lot of creativity in this card. I love the art so much for the Toth deck. There's a lot of becoming, taking potential and making it reality. And I always think the Magus points us to, the Magus the magician, points us to the idea that we create our reality and you start to own that more. You start to really step into your role in creating your experience of life. So that's the pro of taking the course. You have all this creative potential that you start to turn into your reality. The con of taking the course is the Death card. I love the Death card. In all decks, I think it's especially beautiful in this deck. The reason I love it is death is about new life ultimately. And yes, there's letting go, and that can be very painful. That can, it can be something we fight a lot, the death and the letting go. But ultimately, you have to let go if you want new energy in your life. As a con card in this query, I think death is telling you you're going to have to let go of some of your other ambitions and maybe even identities if you take this course. And I know, Jessica, the 7, you have a lot of ambitions, you have a lot of ideas, there are a lot of directions calling to you. 7s can be very future oriented, so they're usually several steps ahead and it's kind of hard to ground into the present. And the Death card is not fun for a 7 because it means saying no to anything. A Death card is a no. A letting go is a no. And so that's the downside of the course, is you're going to have to figure out what you let die as you're creating. These are both really beautiful. That's definitely not a strong yes or no for the course. If anything, it's a strong yes just because as an artist, I like the idea of you using that creative potential and building something. And as a 7, I honestly like the idea of you sort of paring down the many ambitions and projects you have into what you want to focus on, what doesn't die. And again, the idea of rebirth, it's like when you say no to all those things, when you pare down, when you let go, what kind of new energy, and in your case, what kind of money energy might get to come into your life if you take the course. If you don't take the course. The pro of not taking the course is the 4 of Discs. I really like this card in the Toth deck in particular. I often think of this card as an energy that is so stable, which is wonderful. I have all mutable energy in my chart and a lot of air and water, not a lot of grounding. So stability has a certain appeal to me. It's so stable. The warning of this card is that stability becomes a fortress. It becomes rigid. And I feel like this image really shows you that. There's something really solid about this picture. Excuse me. But also something unyielding or closed. That's it. It's solid, but it's closed. And so, in light of not taking this course, and in light of the fact that Jessica the 7 does have some financial concerns, the upside is it doesn't rock her boat financially. And obviously she wants to make more money. And so what I'm hearing, Jessica, is if I do take the course, I have to put out some money, and I'm not sure if that will give me dividends. If I don't take the course, I'm still not sure if I'm going to get dividends. I still don't know where my income's coming from. Not taking the course does not strain your pocketbook, and that looks really favorable for you. There's something about leaning into the stability of not adding one more thing that looks really comforting. Eventually, you'll want to break out of that, and you'll want to figure out what you do want to spend your money on. But you've spent a lot in your training. I've witnessed this with Jessica. You spent a lot on your training. You've spent a lot on supplies. You've spent a lot on both like your art training, but also business training. And so this card is sort of saying, if you don't take this class, you don't have to worry about like budgeting for all those extras for a while. You can just have this nice little financial fortress and not rock the boat too much. There's something about, the Magus and the Devil, to me, it's creativity, but it's a rocky creativity. There's a lot of newness, a lot of unknowns, a lot of, like we said, letting go. The upside of this energy, not taking the class, is you don't have that rockiness. And there's a place for stability and there's a place for adventure, right? We need both as humans. But this card is pointing out that in a lot of ways, you're wanting a little less adventure when it comes to figuring out new horizons and financial risks, and not taking the class feeds that need. The con of not taking the course, interesting, is the 5 of Cups. Jessica and I are actually making a tarot deck together, and we're working on the cup suit right now. So I hope this brings up some images and ideas for you, Jess. The 5 of Cups here, in the Host deck, they call it disappointment. I think of it as loss, and I think of it as like very emotional loss. There's a sense of sadness, regret, grief certainly, but more almost like a melancholy or a sense of having missed the boat. This is a very 7 sentiment, the idea of missing the boat, FOMO, right? 7s are really prone to FOMO. I don't know if you are, Jessica. I haven't necessarily seen that in you, but that's what comes up to me when I see this card. Is there's a hyper awareness of what you're not getting if you don't take this class. And I don't know exactly what the class would offer you, but I think specifically whatever that content is, there's a hyper disappointment that that's not something you're adding into your toolbox. So stable, yes, but also disappointing to not be expanding. Finally, an advice card, pulled the Empress. And the Empress is such another creative card. This is about fertility and fecundity. This is about growing new things, gestating new things, creative ideas, imagination. It's really like taking the seed of an idea and nurturing it into a new reality. In the context of this spread, we pulled 2 majors for taking the course, 2 minors for not taking the course, and a major for the advice card. When major arcana show up in a reading, they want you to pay a little more attention. Those are the bigger transitions or shifts or themes of your life. So I don't like to give advice when I do a reading. I don't want to answer your question for you. I just want to give you information about what the cards are presenting for you. And I will say that the cards are really leaning into the idea of taking the course. The pros, the cons, but sort of like there's big expansion there. There's a big step to take there. The not taking the course feels much more like playing it safe. And, Jessica has 2 young children. She has been through a lot in the past couple years, as we all have with COVID. She's launching a new business. There's a place for safety. But if you choose that safety, be ready for some of that disappointment. Be ready for stability that feels boring or limiting. So make that choice. Be very conscious about that's what you're choosing, and you understand that. If you choose the bigger expansion of taking the course, recognize that it might be a rocky road. It might not have that stability. It might not have a clear outcome even. It might not be I take this course and then X, Y, and Z happen. That's not how creativity and expansion work. So if you can tolerate that, if you can tolerate that you're choosing creativity and expansion, not necessarily the end goal of stability, then it looks like there's a way you get to really fertilize the creative spark that's within you. And it's interesting, when I first saw this card, my thought was sort of the opposite of what I'm saying out loud, but this is what came out. When I first saw this card, I thought, yes, maybe it would be good for Jessica to focus on her creative output right now. I know Jessica wants to, she has some great prints in her Society 6 store and on her Etsy site, her personal website, and she's coming up with other ideas to make really unique, personalized art for folks. When I first saw this, I was like, yes, maybe she just needs to take all these creative ideas she has and focus on that instead of one more class. When I look at this spread, it actually looks like the class interplays with those creative sparks in a really interesting way. Who knows what that is? That's not my thing to say. But that's what's showing up. So I think, Jessica, the 7, sevens will rarely pick the stable, secure pullback option. So looking at this, I can see why you're so pulled towards the class. Let's see if anything else comes through about that. No, I actually think that's pretty well read. To really bring the Enneagram aspect home one more time, I just really consider the ways that 7 nature of looking several steps ahead, FOMO, wanting the next big adventure to be on the table, might be influencing this decision. And see if you can get just a little space and neutrality from that. Can you notice whatever pattern comes up for you around thinking about the future, about thinking about new classes, about thinking about money, and just see if you can feel that pattern, notice it as a pattern, and be a little more neutral, objective, open as you consider what kind of wisdom these cards are offering you as you make your choice. Let us know how it goes.